What really happened to the Mai Tai once it landed in Hawaii? The drink that started as a drink made of fine old Jamaican rums and fresh lime juice turned into a drink with grenadine, orange juice, and pineapple juice. To answer these questions, we got to look to someone who knows more about this subject. And if you've ever dove deep into the Mai Tai and the history of the Mai Tai, you'll come across ultimatemaitai.com, where Kevin Crossman covers the de-evolution of the Mai Tai in Hawaii. And lucky for us, because Kevin Crossman is here at the Make and Drink bar to talk to us about the de-evolution of the Mai Tai. All right, I'm here with Kevin Crossman from ultimatemaitai.com. Kevin, thank you for being here.
And thanks for having me. This place is great.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. So we're going to get into the de-evolution of the Mai Tai. And one of the first questions I have for you is, how and when does the Mai Tai get to Hawaii?
Well, Trader Vic's had a restaurant in 1940 in Honolulu, but there was a falling out with the co-owners, and he lost all the territorial rights to the state of Hawaii, or the territory of Hawaii. So he was approached by the Matson Company, which owned the Royal Hawaiian, the Moana Hotel. He did 10 Trader Vic's greatest hits, and one of the cocktails that was on that menu was the Mai Tai. It wasn't at the top, it wasn't the featured cocktail, it was almost down at the bottom. But that was the cocktail that was, turned out to be a really big hit, and people liked it because it was listed on the menu as being from Tahiti. Mm-hmm. So it sold a little bit better than if he said it was from Oakland.
So recently in my video on the history of the Mai Tai, I shared the recipe from the 1972 press release, as well from the 1970 press release, and the 1972 bartender's guide. So those are much later. Many assume that the recipe was a trade secret and that no one knew the recipe. Is that true?
It is completely not true. There's plenty of evidence. First and foremost, he was giving this recipe to the Royal Hawaiian. You can't keep that secret. He wasn't overseeing the restaurant from thousands of miles away or anything like that. In 1956, a customer wrote to Trader Vic and asked for the recipe. And Trader Vic actually wrote the letter back to this customer, and that letter itself was saved and later put up for auction, which is how we knew about it. And it's the Mai Tai recipe that we'll be talking about. That is basically the modified 1944 Mai Tai recipe. He shared it freely with a customer. So this was not a trade secret. Recipe got out. It was published in a whole bunch of different books. It was published in newspaper articles. They all varied a little bit, but they were all quite similar. That it was orgeat, it was orange curacao, typically rock candy syrup, and then 2 types of rum. So this was out there all over the place well before it was officially published in 1970.
And what I think when I think about that letter, I often wonder, how many letters like that did he send? Like, we just know of that one, but it's possible that there was more than one, maybe likely. And if there was just one, it was just because he asked, just because some guy asked. And I learned this from your website. The guy who won at an auction owned a company that restored documents. So he restored the document, and I don't know if we have like a high-res scan of it, but it's pretty cool that the person who got it restored it to like a better version of itself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very cool.
So the Mai Tai recipe starts showing up in newspapers, in syndicated columns and magazines. So when does this start happening?
The Mai Tai got a lot of press starting in the mid-50s, and the recipe, I see newspaper articles starting in the late 50s and into the early 60s that all use this same similar recipe. And, syndicated articles across newspapers across the country. So this was not just a regional thing, just in Hawaii.
And I think it's also important to know, if you're in the modern times, you're thinking about a newspaper not having a wide reach, but in the 50s, you had newspaper, you had magazines, you had television. They probably weren't talking about the Mai Tai on television, but you had these features and magazines, and people were reading these, and that happens in that Stanton Delaplane. He says that people started writing and asking him for the recipe. So that's when he shared the recipe. So you have this out there, people keep seeing the Mai Tai in the newspaper all over the country, and they don't have email, they don't have cell phones. They write into the writer asking for the recipe. All right, so eventually the recipe devolves and they start putting in pineapple juice, orange juice, grenadine, lemon juice, anything else. Like, when do we think that starts happening?
Well, we start seeing some published recipes in late 50s starting to use lemon juice, and starting in the 60s, pineapple juice becomes part of some of these published recipes. Now, the Royal Hawaiian and the Moana, which were the original places where Trader Vic brought the cocktail, there's documented evidence into the late 60s and early 70s that they were still doing this original Hawaiian style Mai Tai without pineapple juice and orange juice. But we do know, thanks to this book here, Drinks of Hawaii, by Paul B. Dick. This in 1972 is when the Royal Hawaiian switches over to the recipe that we know today that was published in the Beach Bum Berry books. Orange juice, lemon juice, pineapple juice, 3 different types of rums. So more of your traditional Hawaiian style Mai Tai. And starting in the 60s also is when you started to see that dark rum float being added sometimes as an option, sometimes as part of the sort of official recipe. And you could see over time how people came to Hawaii. They wanted pineapple. It was so ubiquitous. It was part of every ad for pineapple was Hawaii. There's a reason Hawaiian pizza has pineapple on it.
Yeah.
And so people thought, well, the Mai Tai is the most famous drink in Hawaii. It should have pineapple juice too. And a bartender was asked to put pineapple juice. Why wouldn't he?
Yeah.
And also people seem to like it too with pineapple juice. So that's how it evolved.
Yeah, and I think that the way people talk about the Mai Tai now, me, you, other people, it's probably, and it's for certain, way more precious about the Mai Tai and the origin than I'm sure a bartender or a tourist was in Hawaii in the 60s and 70s. They just wanted a cocktail. They didn't know about the lore of the Mai Tai, because really all anyone knew about the Mai Tai was those newspaper columnists saying, have a Mai Tai, drink a Mai Tai. Here's what a Mai Tai is.
They wanted a potent drink. It was known for being a little bit boozy, and that's what they wanted on vacation, and why not?
So the Mai Tai is created in 1944. It goes to Hawaii in 53, and eventually it has pineapple juice in it. But that's really not the recipe that made it famous, the one with pineapple juice. But it's also not that 1944 recipe that made it famous. So what is the recipe that makes the Mai Tai famous?
So all of the recipes that were published in this era use some common, typical building blocks. So they use a juice of 1 lime, so 1 ounce, but then they split the rum base. A dark Jamaican rum, like Meyer's of the time, which would have been 97 proof, very flavorful, but not long aged, not hard to get. It's much easier to deal with something like that was very mainstream, like Meyer's out in Hawaii, back in those days especially. But then that rum is cut with a light Puerto Rican rum. So it's lighter, it's easier to drink. You still get some of that flavor from that dark Jamaican rum, but it is not heavy in your face like it would be if it was a full 2 ounces of that. And then all of the sweeteners are put in equal parts. Some recipes call for 1/4 ounce, some for 1/3 of an ounce, but all of them talk about orgeat, orange curacao, and typically rock candy syrup in equal parts.
All right, so now we are going to make the Mai Tai recipe that becomes a worldwide famous sensation. All right, for this one you need 1 ounce of lime juice, 1/3 ounce of rock candy syrup, 1/3 ounce of orgeat, 1/3 ounce of an orange curacao, 1 ounce of a light Puerto Rican rum, and 1 ounce of a dark Jamaican rum. You're gonna shake this one over crushed or nugget ice. Garnish with fresh mint and an edible orchid. All right, so the world famous Trader Vic's Mai Tai. Let's taste them. Cheers.
Cheers. And mahalo.
It's a great Mai Tai.
And one of the things that we did here for the light Puerto Rican, we used Trader Vic's rum. It's nothing special. It's just a good Puerto Rican rum. And then to get more like that traditional 1950s Meyer's, I would always recommend Worthy Park 109. It's a sort of a charred taste, a little bit closer to a Demerara than some of your funky Jamaican rums. I think this is a better substitute than something like Karuba. Plus it's a little extra boozy too, bright and lime. And you can really taste that flavor coming through because the light rum obviously is not really imparting much flavor here, but you can see how this was really popular back in
Yeah.
those days because it was not like any cocktail that they may have been expecting, and it's the testament to the Mai Tai, easy to drink, similar to a margarita or a daiquiri, but with some additional flavors.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes we all like that are really into this go too far into the like really heavy rums, which are good, but there are times that something like this, which it still has like tons of flavor. It's not light by any means, but when you're splitting it with the Puerto Rican rum, you're just cutting down on some of the like intensity from your dark or your Jamaican rum. And I agree, if you put Karuba in here, it's a totally different like experience. And I just mentioned this to you. I was at Trader Vic's last week. You were there a couple days ago. I was there a couple days before, and I ordered an Appleton 12 Mai Tai. You know, no big, heavy, intense, funky, dark Jamaican rums in there, and it was one of the best Mai Tais I've ever had. It was one of my favorite Mai Tais of Mai Tai month, which you don't necessarily think you're going to get at Trader Vic's, but you do.
The Appleton 12 Mai Tai is great.
All right, that's it for this one. I'm Derek. This is Make and Drink. Thank you to Kevin Crossman for coming to the Make and Drink bar to talk about the de-evolution of the Hawaiian Mai Tai, of the Mai Tai, and to share a delicious, real Hawaiian Mai Tai, I guess.
The original Hawaiian Mai Tai.
Original Hawaiian Mai Tai. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel. You can check out the Patreon as well. Thank you to Kevin for being the first patron to the Make and Drink Patreon. And otherwise, we'll see you on the next one. All right, we'll do a cheers, looking at the camera. Okay, and I don't know, that's fine. We'll see.